One freezing night, my father shoved me into the snow. The air cut like blades against my skin. I pounded on the locked door, begging him to let me back inside, but he only spat words that felt like stones. I didn't deserve the roof over my head. I was 17, barefoot, trembling so violently I thought my bones would break. Stumbling through the dark yard, I headed for my grandfather's old shed. That place had always felt eerie ever since he passed. But that night it was my only refuge. I forced the door open, wincing at the groan of rusted hinges, and fumbled through layers of dust and cobwebs, praying for a blanket. Instead, I found a heavy wooden trunk. My fingers numb and stiff, I wrestled it open, and inside was an envelope with my name, written in my grandfather's unmistakable hand. I ripped it open, desperate for anything to distract me from the biting cold. The words inside made my heart pound. It was his handwritten will, revealing a secret my father had kept from me for years, something that could have changed everything. Looking back, my life feels divided into two eras. The time when Grandpa Mitchell was alive and everything that followed his death. When he was still here, our ranch in Arizona was alive with sunlight and wind carrying the smell of dust and sage. I ran through the fields in cracked sneakers, always hearing his voice reminding me to endure. Grandpa was tough, but with me he was gentle. I felt seen in a way I never did with my father. Mitchell had built everything with his own hands, raising cattle, mending fences, and acquiring every acre through years of relentless work. Townspeople respected him, some even feared him, but around me he softened. He would lift me onto his knee and say, "Jack, this land is more than dirt. It carries every ounce of effort you give it. Never forget that when I'm gone." Those words became my lifeline in a household that offered little comfort. My father, Nathan Carlisle, presented a polished image to the world. To neighbors and business associates, he was charming, successful, a devoted family man. Behind closed doors, though, he measured worth in obedience and wealth. If you didn't fit his idea of perfection, you were disposable. My mother, Clara, was quiet and tender. She grew up in a small town working at a library, loving books and calm mornings. Against Nathan, she learned silence was survival. Yet she shielded me in subtle ways. A warm meal when he wasn't looking. Whispered words of love when the house felt heavy. She was my anchor, though her eyes always betrayed a deep sadness whenever Nathan reminded us everything belonged to him. Our family's turning point came when Grandpa Mitchell sold the ranch. Everyone assumed he'd never part with it, but age had made him seek security for his family. He sold it for $5 million, trusting Nathan to use the money wisely. No one realized Nathan was already squandering it on cars, parties, and extravagant schemes. I was only 14 when Grandpa Mitchell died. At the funeral, I stood beside his casket, staring at the hands that had once guided me. Nathan stood at the front, talking about Mitchell's strength and how he had passed down his wisdom. I wanted to shout that it wasn't true, that Nathan had only inherited greed. My mother, Clara, squeezed my hand, urging me to stay silent, and I swallowed the words, burying them with everyone else that day. After Mitchell's death, life felt colder, even under Arizona's scorching sun. Nathan reminded me constantly that everything I had came from him, not from Grandpa's hard work. "I keep a roof over your head," he would say. "You'd have nothing without me." I wanted to believe some part of him cared, but his eyes were always cold, sharp, calculating. At night, when the desert air turned bitter, I would sometimes sneak to the old shed at the edge of the property. It was falling apart, with holes in the roof and rusted tools hanging crookedly on the walls. But it was the last place I could feel Grandpa Mitchell's presence. I would sit on a worn wooden stool, imagining him stepping through the door, calling me boy in that gruff, affectionate tone. In those moments, I pretended he had left something for me, proof that I still mattered even after death. The truth was that I was growing up invisible. At school, I kept my head down, hiding the bruises and exhaustion. Teachers would ask if I was okay, and I'd force a smile and say yes. Friends stopped inviting me to hang out because Nathan rarely let me leave the house. I became the tired, distant kid who nobody noticed. The only warmth I felt came from Clara. She would read to me from her books at night, even when Nathan said I was too old for stories. "You're stronger than he knows," she would whisper. Those words carried me through the nights when Nathan's voice thundered through the house, tearing us both down. By the time I turned 17, the house no longer felt like home. Grandpa Mitchell's fortune was supposed to secure my future, but I saw none of it. Instead, I saw Nathan's new car gleaming in the driveway, his designer suits hanging in the closet, and his endless nights of drinking with men who pretended to respect him. I lived under a roof bought with my grandfather's sacrifice, yet I felt like an intruder. The shed became my only sanctuary. I would sit there for hours, away from shouting, away from Nathan's heavy judgment. That broken space filled with dust and memories was the only place I could breathe. Little did I know it held more than memories. It held a truth that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my family and myself. When winter came, tension in the house became unbearable. Nathan's temper was sharper than ever, and his patience for me had disappeared. I was old enough to see through his lies, and he hated it. He wanted me to bow my head and stay silent, but every day it grew harder to obey. The breaking point came on a night colder than any I could remember. Snow had been falling since morning, covering the ranch in white and making it almost unrecognizable. Nathan had gone out drinking, and Clara and I tried to enjoy the rare calm. She made soup and we sat at the table together, speaking in hushed tones like fugitives hiding from an unseen danger. For a few hours it had felt like we still had a family. That illusion shattered when Nathan stumbled through the front door, his coat half open and the sharp smell of alcohol clinging to him. His gaze fell on the broken pieces of a porcelain vase that had toppled earlier while I was cleaning. It had belonged to my grandmother. I had tried to sweep the shards into a box, but Nathan's eyes went straight to the empty space on the shelf. "What happened here?" His voice was low but tense, edged with anger. I froze. Clara answered quickly. "It was an accident, Nathan. The shelf gave way." He ignored her and fixed his glare on me. "Did you break it?" I swallowed hard and nodded. I didn't mean to. It slipped while I was dusting." The room went silent. Nathan's eyes darkened and his face twisted in a way that made my stomach churn. "Do you have any idea how valuable that was?" "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'll fix it. I'll try to fix it." "You can't fix anything." His voice rose and Clara stepped in front of me. He shoved her aside. "Do you think you deserve to live under this roof if you can't respect what's mine?" "Grandpa left it for all of us," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "It wasn't just yours." For a moment the room froze. Nathan's face darkened like an approaching storm. I had said what he always feared. I reminded him the fortune wasn't his alone, that Mitchell had intended it for me too. "You ungrateful little brat," he growled, grabbing my arm with a force that made me cry out. Clara shouted, pleading with him, but he dragged me down the hallway, his grip crushing. He flung open the back door and the winter wind hit me like knives. Before I could react, Nathan shoved me out into the snow. I landed hard, the cold biting through my thin clothes. My hand stung as I tried to rise. "Stay out there until you learn some respect," he said flatly, as though I wasn't worth more than a broken vase. Then he slammed the door and locked it. I pounded on the wood, screaming, "Please, Dad, let me in. I'm freezing." My knuckles cracked against the door. Clara's muffled voice begged for mercy, but Nathan's words drowned her out. "He needs to learn." The snow stung my skin as I collapsed against the door. I had never felt so unwanted, so discarded. My lungs burned and my body shook uncontrollably. Part of me wanted to curl into the snow and wait for the cold to take me. Then I saw the shed at the edge of the property. Half hidden in the snow, it loomed like a shadow. It was eerie, always had been since Mitchell passed, but fear of the cold outweighed fear of ghosts. I forced myself forward, stumbling through drifts that seemed to grow heavier with each step. When I reached the door, I yanked it open with frozen hands. The hinges groaned and dust and rusted metal filled my lungs. I dropped to my knees, frantically sifting through old tools and boxes. My fingers brushed rope, cracked leather, and rusted nails, no blankets. Shivering violently, my teeth chattered as I crawled toward the old wooden trunk against the far wall. I had seen it before, but Mitchell never let me open it, saying it held things from the past that no one needed to see. Now it was my only hope. My frozen fingers clawed at the lid until it creaked open, sending a cloud of dust into the air. I coughed, pulling the lid higher, bracing myself to find warmth or protection inside. Instead, stacks of yellowed papers and old photographs tumbled out. At first, I wanted to slam the trunk shut. Papers wouldn't keep me warm. But then something at the bottom caught my eye. A thick, sealed envelope with my name scrawled across it in steady, confident handwriting. It was unmistakably my grandfather Mitchell's. My breath caught, and suddenly my shivering wasn't just from the cold. I hesitated, fingers trembling as I lifted the envelope. For a moment, I didn't want to open it. If Nathan had hidden this from me, there must have been a reason. Part of me feared the truth inside, but another part burned with curiosity. I pressed the envelope to my chest, feeling a strange warmth seep through the paper. This was for me, only me. I sank to the dirt floor of the shed, clutching it like it was the last lifeline I had. My breath came out in frosty clouds, but a growing fire burned inside me. Grandpa had written my name on this envelope, no one else's. That alone told me it was important. My fingers quivered as I slid one under the flap and tore it open. Inside were several folded sheets of paper. The ink was faded but readable, written in the same familiar hand that used to leave me notes on birthdays and tuck small messages in my pockets. I read the first lines and the cold disappeared from my mind. "Jack, if you are reading this, it means I am gone and Nathan has done what I feared he might. I trust you more than him. What I have left is yours." My chest tightened and my hands shook, not from the snow but from the weight of his words. My grandfather had seen through Nathan's charm, recognized the greed that had poisoned him. The letter went on. Mitchell had set aside a large portion of the money from the land sale in a separate account, held in trust for me until I turned 18. Nathan was only a temporary guardian, never an heir. My grandfather warned that Nathan might twist the truth, but the will and the signed papers were undeniable proof of his intentions. I read the lines again and again as if each word could shield me from the cold. "You are my legacy, Jack. The land brought money, but you carry my spirit. Do not let Nathan make you small. This is yours. Stand tall." Tears blurred my vision, burning against the icy air. For years I had felt invisible in Nathan's house, a shadow tolerated only out of convenience. But now in my hands was proof that I mattered. Someone had believed in me enough to entrust me with a fortune, with a future. A new fire surged inside me. I wasn't just a boy begging for warmth in the snow anymore. I was Mitchell's grandson, chosen to carry on what he had built. I leaned against the trunk, clutching the papers to my chest, thinking ahead. If Nathan discovered them, he would try to take them, destroy them even. I had to protect this at least until my 18th birthday. When that day came, the money would legally be mine, and Nathan would lose the power he had clung to for so long. I imagined his face when he realized his control was over, when he understood that the fortune he flaunted had never truly belonged to him. For the first time in my life, I felt like I held the reins to my own future. That vision gave me courage, but courage alone wasn't enough. I had to survive the night. My body ached. My toes were numb, but my spirit felt sharper than ever. I dug through the trunk, pulling out old coats and scraps of cloth, wrapping myself as best I could. They smelled of dust and mothballs, but they offered enough warmth to keep the shivering from overtaking me. As I lay there, cocooned in the remnants of the past and clutching the will to my chest, I whispered into the darkness, "Thank you, Grandpa. You didn't leave me alone." The shed groaned in the wind and snow rattled against the roof, but I no longer felt abandoned. Nathan had thrown me out as though I were nothing, yet Mitchell's words reminded me of my worth. They gave me purpose. When pale morning light filtered through the cracks in the shed, I rose with a determination I had never known. My body was sore, my skin raw from the cold, but I carried something stronger than pain. I carefully tucked the will into the lining of one of the old coats, hiding it where Nathan would never think to look. Walking back toward the house, the snow crunching beneath my frozen feet, I felt a shift inside me. Nathan had thought he had broken me, proving his power by throwing me into the night, but he didn't realize that in trying to crush me, he had led me straight to the truth that would undo his control. I no longer felt powerless. I had choice and proof. I resolved to protect what Mitchell had left me, and when the time came, I would claim it. Nathan might still see me as a boy he could intimidate, but I was already preparing to become the man my grandfather had believed I could be. What began as the worst night of my life had transformed in that shed. I discovered something Nathan could never take: my worth, my strength, and the key to a future that belonged to me by right. When I walked back into the house that morning, Nathan's eyes immediately met mine. He didn't ask where I had slept. He didn't care. All he wanted was to see fear, and when he didn't, his jaw tightened. Clara rushed to wrap me in a blanket, horrified by my raw hands and pale skin. But I carried the will like armor. Every word of Mitchell's letter pulsed through my mind, steadying me as Nathan barked orders and accused me of weakness. He thought he had won, but I held a secret far greater than his anger. For weeks I kept the will hidden. I slipped it beneath the floorboards of the shed, wrapped in layers of cloth to protect it. Every night I visited it, whispering promises to my grandfather that Nathan would never destroy what had been entrusted to me. Clara noticed the change. "What happened that night in the shed?" she asked quietly. "You came back different," I wanted to tell her, but fear held me silent. If Nathan discovered the truth, he would take it from me. So I carried the burden alone, waiting for my 18th birthday. Meanwhile, Nathan's control began to slip. He grew more reckless, spending money faster than ever, flaunting his wealth to neighbors, mocking me at every opportunity. One evening, after another of his furious rages, he stormed toward the shed. I watched from the window, heart hammering, as he kicked over boxes and muttered curses about Mitchell and his fortune, completely unaware that the real power had already slipped from his hands. I realized then that Nathan knew. He didn't know exactly where the will was, but he suspected it existed, and he was desperate to keep it hidden. That night I made a choice. I couldn't wait any longer. If Nathan found it first, my last chance at freedom would vanish. I retrieved the will from beneath the floorboards and carried it inside, pressed safely under my shirt. Clara was in the kitchen, her hands shaking as she scrubbed dishes, the aftermath of another argument with Nathan weighing on her. I could no longer stay silent. "Mom," I whispered, pulling the envelope from under my shirt. "Grandpa left this for me." Her hands froze mid-motion. When she saw the handwriting, her eyes widened, and she covered her mouth. "Mitchell's will," she whispered. Tears welled as she read the words, trembling with a mix of shock and relief. "He left this for you. Nathan was only supposed to protect it for you." I could see it in her eyes. She had known Nathan was hiding something, but she had never imagined this. Before she could say more, Nathan's voice thundered from the hallway. "What's going on in here?" I stuffed the papers back into the envelope, but it was too late. He had seen. His face twisted in fury as he lunged forward, snatching the envelope from my hands. "What is this?" he demanded, ripping it open. His eyes scanned the pages, lips curling into a snarl. "You think this changes anything? A few scribbles don't undo what I've built." "It's not yours," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "Grandpa left it for me. You've been stealing from me all these years." The room seemed to tremble with the weight of my words. Clara stepped between us, speaking with a strength I had never heard from her before. "He's right, Nathan. Mitchell never trusted you. He trusted Jack. You've been lying to both of us." Nathan's face flushed red. He crumpled the papers in his fist, but I lunged forward, grabbing them back with every ounce of strength I had. "No!" I shouted. "You can't take this from me." For the first time, Nathan looked uncertain. He saw the fire in my eyes, the resolve he could not crush. His threats, his fists, his cold words, they couldn't break the truth I held. "You're nothing without me," he spat. "You think this will save you? You'll never survive on your own." I stood taller, gripping the will like a lifeline. "I don't need you anymore. Grandpa gave me everything I need. You can't stop me." A heavy silence fell. Clara's hand rested on my shoulder, standing beside me, not behind him. Nathan's power was slipping. He had spent years controlling us with fear, but now the truth had cut through his lies. I walked past him, clutching the will to my chest. My heart raced, but I felt stronger than ever. Nathan shouted after me, rage breaking his voice, but it no longer mattered. I had what he feared most, proof. That night I hid the will in a place even Nathan could not reach and lay awake in my bed without fear of the man down the hall. My grandfather's words echoed in my mind, steady and unwavering. "Do not let Nathan make you small." I had faced him. I had protected the truth. I knew the fight was only beginning. The will was more than paper. It was my grandfather's voice, my shield, my weapon. With it, I was ready to reclaim everything Nathan had stolen from me. The night I wrestled the will from his hands marked the end of the boy who had lived in fear. From that moment on, I carried myself differently. Nathan still tried to control me, still raised his voice and threw his weight around. But the fear he once inspired had been replaced by something stronger. I had the truth, and the truth gave me courage. In the weeks that followed, my mother became my ally in ways she had never dared before. She no longer hushed me when I spoke up. She no longer averted her eyes when Nathan raised his voice. She stood beside me, her voice firm, her spirit rising with mine. She admitted she had known for years that Mitchell never fully trusted Nathan, but she had felt powerless to act. Now, with the will in our hands, we both understood that power was shifting. My 18th birthday was approaching, the day Nathan would lose legal control over what Mitchell had left me. He grew restless. pacing the halls late into the night, slamming doors, drinking more heavily than ever. He could feel his grip slipping, and nothing terrified him more than the thought of losing what he had stolen. On the morning of my birthday, I stood outside the courthouse, the envelope clutched tightly against my chest. My mother's hand held mine, steady and reassuring, just as it had when I was a child. For the first time, Nathan had no control. The law recognized my grandfather's intentions, and the accounts he had mismanaged and drained were traced back to me. He shouted, cursed, raged, but his words fell flat. His lies had finally caught up to him. When it was over, I stepped into the sunlight with tears in my eyes. I wasn't thinking about the money. I was thinking about Mitchell, how he had truly seen me when my own father could not. In that trust, he had given me the strength to survive. I used part of what he left me to restore the shed, not as a storage place, but as a small memorial. I kept his tools there, his photographs, in the trunk where I had first found the will. It became a place of peace, a reminder that even in my darkest hour, love had reached me. As for Nathan, his power crumbled. Without the fortune to prop up his ego, he was left with nothing but his anger, and even that faded when he realized it no longer controlled me. He had spent a lifetime chasing wealth, and when it slipped away, so did everything else. I walked away from his shadow with my mother at my side. We were free, not just because of money, but because the truth had finally been set free. Looking back, I know that night in the snow could have been the end of me. Instead, it was the beginning. The cold nearly broke my body, but it gave me the chance to open a door to my future. Mitchell's love had reached across death to save me, and I will carry that gift for the rest of my life. The lesson is simple but powerful. Money alone does not destroy people, lies do. Nathan lied to me, to my mother, and to himself, and it cost him everything. My grandfather gave me honesty, and in that honesty I found my strength. If you take anything from this, remember, your worth is not measured by the approval of those who try to control you. It is measured by the truth you carry and the courage to stand tall, even when the world tries to bury you in the cold.